Joining us now, a New York Times reporter. The paper's reporting that the Democratic Party data breach that's been in the news for a couple weeks, believed to be done by Russian hackers, has in fact been more pervasive than previously thought. Officials told the paper the cyber attack breached the private email accounts of more than 100 party officials, and that the target, at least amongst the targets, Hillary Clinton's campaign staffers. Democrats are now worried that more damaging messages are going to surface between now and November in public. Here to talk about all this, one of the journalists behind the New York Times story, Times reporter Eric Lichtblau. Eric, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Mark. How are you?
Good. So this story has been in the news for a couple weeks. Just put a finer point on the intro there. What are you two, your paper, you and your colleague reporting that is new and for Democrats troubling?
Well, basically, it's even bigger and even worse than they thought. I mean, we knew a couple of weeks ago when the WikiLeaks trove of about 20,000 emails came out that the DNC had been hacked and the DCCC, which is the House fundraising arm, had also been hacked. It looks like it went well beyond that. The FBI has started giving briefings to the intelligence committees. They're putting some numbers on this that, at least 100 accounts of personal and private emails, and that number could very well go up. So you're talking about material that's even more personal and potentially even more damaging, and Democrats are kind of scrubbing their own files to see what could get out that's going to hurt us even more.
So Eric, what do we know about that? What do we know about Democrats' sort of after-action analysis of what might have been captured by these hackers and preparing for the worst?
Well, I've been asking that, and the people I've asked that are saying that it's almost an impossible task to know what could be in tens of thousands of emails that could hurt us. As you know, it only takes one or two embarrassing line, almost a throwaway response to an email, plucked out that can prove incredibly damaging and embarrassing. So I think they're sort of preparing for all possibilities. What we saw today, just at the DNC, is that Donna Brazile is bringing in a whole new panel of cybersecurity experts to prepare for maybe the next attack. Now, that might be a little bit too late. Sort of the horse is already out of the barn, and the damage could already be done by the time they get better defenses in place.
Eric, it's Donnie. Is it safe to say that this is, if this is true, and we will be seeing various emails from 100 Clinton staffers, that it is a harbinger of things to come, that we are all going to have to change the way we communicate? Because you and I both know, and Mark, that if you went into anybody's email and you went through 6 months of personal back and forth, you're going to find things that are just not going to seem right when you read them, even those well-intentioned, decent human being, the way we communicate as people. And this could have tremendous implications for this presidential election, and then going forward, how we communicate as a country and as a universe.
Yeah, I think that is true. There's been that sensitivity certainly for the last few years in Washington. The warning from the lawyers, if you don't want to read it in the newspaper, don't put it in an email. But I think that's becoming much more of a real threat the last few months with these with the DNC hack now being tied to the Russians and the dump from WikiLeaks. And even before that, you saw the Sony controversy last year, where a few emails to and from Sony executives, brought down a number of people.
Mark, I want to ask you a question, and not to do creative writing. What would be the kind of thing that would be a game ender for Hillary Clinton? I mean, that she would be losing sleep, and it's not going to be a turn of a phrase. What would be a worst-case scenario for her?
Well, I mean, I think more meat on the bones of potential interaction between the foundation and the State Department would obviously be a problem, or some sort of quid pro quo regarding income that the family got through speeches or what have you. And as your question suggested, and as I think you see in the latest round of Clinton emails that came out, we've been talking about for the last couple of days, not through hacking, but through the litigation. Sometimes you take strands of things without the context. The Clinton folks are reluctant to supply the context in full, but the context would put a less negative light on what an individual email might show. Eric, since your story came out, has there been any reaction? Has anybody suggested new information that you're going to be publishing in the coming news cycle?
The cybersecurity board that the DNC is putting in place, we mentioned that. No, nothing in terms of specifics arising from the emails yet, but that's obviously what the Democrats are worried about.
Real quick, what is the role now of the FBI and other government agencies now that, in theory, the Russians have what they're going to take? What are they trying to do now as sort of after the fact?
Well, the FBI's main goal is what they call attribution, who was behind this. And they are highly confident, almost to the point of certainty, that it was the Russians, that it was two of the Russian intel services. The question now is really almost a diplomatic one. Will the White House publicly accuse the Russians of being behind this attack, as they've done in a few isolated cases in the past, like with North Korea? Or will they just see no benefit to taking that course? The FBI will, of course, then also try and see if they can determine how it was that WikiLeaks came upon these emails. Did the Russian intelligence people give it directly to WikiLeaks, or more likely, were there cutouts, were there intermediaries passed through who then got it to WikiLeaks? And what was the Russians' motive? Was this, in fact, a politically inspired campaign to somehow affect the election, which is a pretty radical idea, to be honest, in terms of Russian intelligence? Or was this just sort of your everyday intelligence gathering, things that they do all the time, except that it normally doesn't become public?